Her stepmother threw her out. Then her fiancé arrives in private jet with the vice president. You have exactly 5 minutes to get out of my house before I call the police and have you arrested for theft. Lauren stood frozen in the doorway of what used to be her bedroom. The room where her father had read her bedtime stories. The room where she'd cried herself to sleep just 3 nights ago after burying him. Veronica's voice cut through the silence like a knife, and there was something in her stepmother's eyes that Lauren had never seen before. Or maybe she had always seen it, but her father's presence had kept it hidden. I didn't steal anything, Lauren said quietly. Her voice barely made it past her lips. At 16, she'd already learned that sometimes speaking up didn't matter. Sometimes people had already decided what they wanted to believe. Veronica held up a velvet box. Then explain why I found my diamond bracelet hidden in your drawer. The one that's been missing since the funeral. There's something about betrayal that people don't talk about enough. It doesn't always come with warning signs or dramatic music. Sometimes it comes from the people who smiled at your father's funeral. Sometimes it wears expensive perfume and stands in your dead parents' house like they own it. Sometimes it waits until you're alone and vulnerable and 16 years old with nowhere to go. Her name was Lauren Mitchell, and this was supposed to be the part of her life where people felt sorry for her. Where distant relatives showed up with casseroles and sympathy. Where her stepmother, who had been married to her father for 8 years, would at least pretend to care that she'd just lost the only parent she had left. Instead, she was being accused of theft by the woman her father had trusted. The woman who was now holding a bracelet that Lauren had never seen before, claiming it had been found in her room. Behind Veronica stood her 2 children, Marcus and Shayla, both in their early 20s. They weren't even trying to hide their smirks. If you're watching this, you need to understand something. This isn't just a story about a girl who got thrown out of her house. This is about what happens when people mistake kindness for weakness. When they see grace as something they can exploit. When they forget that the same God who allows you to fall is the same one who teaches you to fly. So if you've ever felt discarded, unwanted, or thrown away like yesterday's trash, keep watching. Because what happened next changed everything. But let me take you back to where it really started. For days earlier, Lauren had stood in a black dress that didn't fit right, watching them lower her father into the ground. Henry Mitchell had been a successful businessman, the kind of man who built things from nothing. He owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across 3 states, had investments in real estate, and sat on the boards of 2 major companies. But to Lauren, he was just Dad, the man who never missed her school plays, who taught her to ride a bike in the driveway of their mansion, who told her every single night that she was loved, valued, and destined for greatness. Pneumonia took him in less than a week. One day he was closing a business deal. 3 days later he was in the ICU. 2 days after that he was gone. The funeral had been massive. Business partners, politicians, distant relatives who Lauren had never met. All of them showed up in black, saying things like, "So sorry for your loss," and "He was a great man." Veronica had played the grieving widow perfectly. She wore black Chanel, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, and accepted condolences with the grace of someone who'd practiced in a mirror. Lauren had felt numb through all of it. She was 16 and an orphan. Her mother had died giving birth to her, so her father had been her entire world. And now that world was gone. The will reading happened the day after the funeral. Lauren barely remembered it. She sat in the lawyer's office while Mr. Peterson, her father's attorney for 20 years, read through the legal language. Most of it went over her head. Trusts, beneficiaries, estate allocations. But she remembered the moment Veronica's face changed. "To my beloved daughter, Lauren Mitchell, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all property, business shares, and trust funds, to be held in trust until her 25th birthday, at which point she will assume full control. I appoint James Peterson as executor and trustee until that time." The silence in that office was deafening. Lauren didn't fully understand what it meant. She was 16. She didn't want money or property or business shares. She wanted her dad back. But Veronica understood perfectly. Her stepmother's lawyer had immediately started asking questions. What about Mrs. Mitchell? What about her children? Surely there was some provision for the widow? Mr. Peterson had been calm but firm. There are standard spousal provisions as required by law, but Mr. Mitchell was very clear about his wishes. His biological daughter inherits the bulk of the estate. They'd left that office in separate cars. Veronica hadn't said a word to Lauren for 2 days. And then came the accusation. Now Lauren stood in her bedroom doorway with her stepmother holding a bracelet she'd supposedly stolen, and 2 stepchildren who'd never liked her watching like it was entertainment. I didn't take that, Lauren repeated. I've never even seen it before. Of course you'd say that. Veronica stepped closer. You think because your father left you everything, you can just take whatever you want? You think you're entitled to steal from me? I'm not stealing anything. This is my house too. Not anymore. Veronica's smile was cold. You have 5 minutes. Pack a bag and get out. You can't kick me out. I'm 16. I live here. You're a thief. And if you're not gone in 5 minutes, I'm calling the police. Let's see what the courts think about a minor caught stealing from her guardian. Lauren's hands started shaking. Mr. Peterson won't let you do this. He's the executor. He's supposed to. Mr. Peterson will be very interested to hear about your theft, and about the other items that have gone missing, and about your behavioral problems since your father died. Veronica tilted her head. Who do you think they'll believe? A grieving widow trying to hold her family together? Or a troubled teenager acting out after losing her parent? Marcus laughed from the hallway. Better start packing, princess. Lauren wanted to fight, wanted to scream, wanted to call Mr. Peterson right then and demand he do something. But she was 16 and terrified, and her father was dead, and the only adults who might have helped her weren't there. So she packed 1 suitcase, clothes, a few photos of her dad, her laptop, some personal items. Her hands shook the entire time. Veronica stood in the doorway watching, making sure she didn't take anything valuable. 20 minutes later, Lauren stood on the front steps of the mansion she'd lived in since she was 8 years old. The mansion her father had bought. The home where she'd felt safe and loved. Veronica closed the door in her face without another word. And just like that, Lauren Mitchell, daughter of Henry Mitchell, heir to a multimillion-dollar estate, was homeless. She stood there for a long time, suitcase at her feet, not knowing where to go or what to do. The sun was setting. She had $43 in her wallet and a phone that would probably get shut off as soon as Veronica called the provider. She didn't know it yet, but that moment on those steps would be the last time she'd ever let anyone make her feel small. The first night, Lauren tried calling Mr. Peterson. The call went straight to voicemail. She left a message explaining what happened, trying to keep her voice steady, trying not to sound like a scared kid, even though that's exactly what she was. He didn't call back. She tried again the next morning, and the morning after that. On the 4th try, his secretary finally answered and told her that Mr. Peterson was aware of the situation and would be in touch when appropriate. The woman's voice was professionally polite and completely cold. That was when Lauren started to understand how alone she really was. But to understand how she got there, you need to know who she was before. You need to know about the girl who used to wake up in a bedroom 3 times the size of most apartments. The girl who'd never had to worry about where her next meal was coming from or whether she'd have a place to sleep. Lauren had been 8 years old when her father married Veronica. She remembered being excited about it, actually. Henry had been single for so long, raising Lauren by himself with the help of nannies and housekeepers. He'd loved her mother deeply, and it had taken him years to even consider dating again. Veronica had seemed perfect. She was elegant, educated, and she seemed to genuinely care about Henry. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage, Marcus and Shayla, both teenagers at the time, and she'd told Henry she wanted to blend their families into something beautiful. Lauren had been so hopeful. She'd never had a mother, and Veronica seemed kind in the beginning. She'd take Lauren shopping, help her pick out dresses for school events, even attended some of her dance recitals. It felt like maybe, finally, Lauren would have the complete family she'd always dreamed about. What she didn't see were the small moments when her father wasn't looking. The way Veronica's smile would disappear the second Henry left the room. The way Marcus would mock Lauren's interests when they were alone. The way Shayla would accidentally ruin Lauren's things and apologize so sweetly that no one suspected it was intentional. Henry had been a good man, but he'd been busy. His business required constant attention. Travel. Meetings. Long hours. He'd trusted Veronica to help raise Lauren, to be the mother figure she needed. And Veronica had played the part perfectly whenever he was around. Lauren remembered one specific afternoon when she was 13. She'd come home from school excited about making the debate team. She'd rushed into the kitchen where Veronica was preparing dinner, eager to share the news. Veronica had barely looked up. "That's nice, dear. Go do your homework. But I thought maybe we could celebrate? Dad said he'd take me out for ice cream when I made the team. Your father is in Chicago on business. And I have a headache. Go to your room." Lauren had left deflated, but she'd made excuses for Veronica in her mind. She's tired. She's stressed. She's dealing with her own kids. I shouldn't expect so much from her. That was the pattern. Lauren constantly made excuses for the coldness, for the distance, for the way Veronica seemed to merely tolerate her existence rather than embrace it. She'd been so desperate for a mother's love that she'd convinced herself the small moments of kindness meant more than they did. Henry had adored his daughter. He'd built his entire business empire with her future in mind. Every deal he closed, every investment he made, it was all for Lauren. He'd told her that constantly. "You're my legacy, sweetheart," he'd say while tucking her in at night, even when she got older and insisted she was too old for tucking in. "Everything I build is for you. Everything I do is to make sure you'll be okay when I'm gone." She'd hated when he talked like that. "You're not going anywhere, Dad." I know. But just in case. I want you to know you'll always be taken care of. I've made sure of it." He had made sure of it. That's what the will proved. Henry Mitchell had protected his daughter even in death, making certain that his estate would go to her, that she'd be financially secure for life. What he hadn't anticipated was how far jealousy could drive people. How much someone could hate a child for having what they thought they deserved. The night before he got sick, Henry had called Lauren into his office. It was late, almost 11, and she'd been studying for a chemistry test. He'd looked tired but happy, sitting behind the massive oak desk where he handled all his business. "Come here, baby girl," he'd said, and she'd sat in the leather chair across from him. "I just finalized something important today," he told her. "Updated my will, made sure all the legal protections are in place. You're going to be a very wealthy young woman someday." "Dad, stop. You're being morbid." "I'm being responsible." He'd reached across the desk and taken her hand. "Lauren, I need you to promise me something. If anything ever happens to me, you fight for what's yours. Don't let anyone take advantage of you. Don't let anyone make you feel small or unworthy. You're a Mitchell. You're strong, even if you don't see it yet." She'd promised, not thinking much of it. Her father was healthy, successful, barely 50 years old. Nothing was going to happen to him. 3 days later, he was in the hospital struggling to breathe. The pneumonia came out of nowhere. One day he had what seemed like a mild cold. The next day he was coughing so hard he couldn't catch his breath. By the time they got him to the hospital, his lungs were already filling with fluid. Lauren had sat by his bedside for 2 days straight. Veronica had been there too, playing the concerned wife, but Lauren noticed she spent more time on her phone than holding Henry's hand. On the last day, when the doctors said there was nothing more they could do, Henry had squeezed Lauren's hand with what little strength he had left. "Remember your promise," he'd whispered. Those were his last words to her. Now, for days after being thrown out of her home, Lauren sat on a bench in a public park, trying to figure out what fighting for what was hers even meant when she had nowhere to sleep. Her phone had been disconnected, just like she'd predicted. Her bank account, which had always had a modest allowance from her father, had been frozen. When she'd tried to use her debit card to buy food, it was declined. She'd checked at the bank and was told that as a minor, the account had been under her father's control, and the executor had placed a hold on all assets pending investigation into irregularities. Veronica had moved fast. Lauren had tried to go to school that first day, thinking maybe she could at least maintain some normalcy, talk to her guidance counselor, explain what was happening. But when she'd arrived at Camden Preparatory Academy, the private school she'd attended since 9th grade, the headmaster had called her into his office. "Miss Mitchell, I'm afraid there's been a situation with your tuition account," he'd said, looking uncomfortable. "We've been informed that your enrollment is being contested, and until the matter is resolved, we can't allow you to attend classes." "Contested? By who?" "Your guardian, Mrs. Veronica Mitchell. She's indicated that there are concerns about your behavior and whether this environment is appropriate for you at this time." Lauren had felt the ground shift under her feet. "This is my school. I've been here for 2 years. My father paid. I understand this is difficult, but our hands are tied until the legal matters are sorted out. I'm sorry." She'd left campus that day knowing she wasn't coming back. Veronica was systematically cutting her off from everything. Home, money, school, any support system she might have had. Her friends had tried to help at first. Jessica, her best friend since freshman year, had offered to let Lauren stay with her. But when Jessica's parents heard about the theft accusations, they'd gotten nervous. They didn't want to be seen as harboring a troubled teen, didn't want to get involved in a legal mess. Jessica had cried when she told Lauren she couldn't help. My parents said if the police get involved, they could get in trouble for hiding you, Jessica had said, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I don't believe you stole anything, but my mom and dad won't budge. That was when Lauren learned that accusations didn't need to be proven to ruin you. They just needed to be said loud enough by the right people. By the end of the first week, she'd run out of options. The $43 in her wallet was gone. She'd spent it on food and a cheap blanket from a discount store. Her suitcase felt heavier every day as she dragged it from place to place, looking for somewhere safe to sleep. The first time she slept outside, it was under a highway overpass. She'd found a spot where some homeless people had set up cardboard shelters. An older woman named Dorothy had helped her, showed her how to arrange the cardboard to block the wind, how to keep her belongings close so they wouldn't get stolen. How old are you, baby? Dorothy had asked, her weathered face creased with concern. 18, Lauren had lied. Dorothy hadn't believed her, but she hadn't pushed. You got people looking for you? No. No one's looking. And that was the truth. No one was looking for Lauren Mitchell. The executor of her father's estate wasn't returning her calls. Her stepmother had probably reported her as a runaway who'd stolen and fled. Her school had erased her. Her friends were scared to help. She was 16 years old and completely invisible. At night, lying on cardboard with her father's photo clutched in her hand, Lauren would replay his last words. Remember your promise. Fight for what's yours. But how was she supposed to fight when she had nothing? No money, no home, no allies. How was she supposed to claim an inheritance when she couldn't even feed herself? The answer wouldn't come for a long time. But something was building in Lauren during those first terrible weeks on the street. Something her father had seen in her, but she'd never recognized in herself. The same strength that had helped Henry Mitchell build an empire from nothing was buried somewhere in his daughter. It would just take hitting absolute rock bottom to dig it out. And she hadn't hit bottom yet. Not even close. 2 months into homelessness, Lauren discovered what real hunger felt like. Not the kind of hunger where you skip lunch and feel a little lightheaded. The kind that makes your stomach cramp so hard you can't stand up straight. The kind that makes you consider things you never thought you'd consider. The kind that erases who you used to be and replaces it with pure survival instinct. She'd been eating once a day if she was lucky. Sometimes she'd find day-old bread behind bakeries. Sometimes church groups would hand out meals. Sometimes she'd go 2 days with nothing but water from public fountains. Her clothes hung loose on her frame. Her school uniform, she'd kept wearing it those first weeks because it was all she had, was dirty and torn now. She'd stopped looking at herself in reflections because the girl staring back wasn't anyone she recognized. But the physical hunger was nothing compared to what was happening with her father's estate. She found out by accident, overhearing a conversation at the public library where she'd go during the day to escape the cold. 2 women were talking near the magazine section, and one of them mentioned the Mitchell estate case. Lauren had frozen, pretending to read while she listened. I heard the stepdaughter completely disappeared, one woman said. Just ran off after getting caught stealing. The widow is trying to have her declared legally incompetent or something so she can manage the estate properly. That's awful. Those poor children, losing their stepfather, and then dealing with that kind of betrayal. I know. Veronica Mitchell is handling it with such grace though. She's already started donating to charities in her late husband's name. There was a whole article about it in the business section. Lauren had walked to the computers with shaking hands and searched her father's name. The articles painted a clear picture. Veronica Mitchell, grieving widow, bravely carrying on her late husband's legacy while dealing with the tragic disappearance of her troubled stepdaughter. There were photos of Veronica at charity events, cutting ribbons, giving speeches. She'd positioned herself as Henry Mitchell's true heir, the one continuing his work while his biological daughter had apparently abandoned everything. One article mentioned that legal proceedings were underway to restructure the estate management given the current circumstances. Another quoted Veronica saying, "My husband would be heartbroken to see what's happened. We're doing everything we can to honor his memory while searching for Lauren and getting her the help she needs." The help she needs. Like Lauren was mentally unstable. Like she was the problem. And people believed it. Why wouldn't they? Veronica was visible, active, present. Lauren was a ghost. A runaway. A troubled teen who'd stolen from her family and disappeared. The legal system was slow, but Veronica was patient. She couldn't access the full estate. Mr. Peterson still held it in trust, but she was making moves. Filing petitions. Building a narrative. creating a paper trail that painted Lauren as unfit to inherit anything. And Lauren couldn't fight back because she literally didn't exist in any meaningful way anymore. No phone, no address, no access to lawyers or courts or anyone who could help her claim what her father had left her. She'd tried one more time to reach Mr. Peterson, using a borrowed phone from Dorothy, the homeless woman who'd helped her that first night. She'd managed to get past his secretary by calling from an unknown number. "Mr. Peterson, this is Lauren Mitchell. Please, I need help. My stepmother threw me out, and I don't have anywhere to." "Miss Mitchell." His voice had been cold, professional. "I've been informed of the theft allegations against you. Until this matter is resolved, I cannot in good conscience provide you access to estate funds or assets. If you're willing to return what you took and enter a treatment program for troubled youth, we can discuss your situation." "I didn't take anything. She planted that bracelet in my room. She wanted me gone so she could. These accusations are serious. Your stepmother has evidence, witnesses, and a documented history of behavioral concerns. If you continue making false claims against Mrs. Mitchell, you could face legal consequences." "She's lying. My father left everything to me, and she's trying to steal it." "Your father left his estate in trust because he was concerned about your maturity level. Given recent events, his concerns appear to have been warranted. My advice is to turn yourself in to the proper authorities, get the help you need, and perhaps in time we can revisit your situation." He'd hung up. That was when Lauren understood the full scope of what Veronica had done. It wasn't just about throwing her out of the house. It was about erasing her completely, making her so irrelevant, so discredited, that even when she tried to speak up, no one would listen. Winter was coming, and Lauren wasn't prepared for it. The September weather had been manageable, even sleeping outside. October brought cold nights that seeped into her bones. By early November, she was waking up shivering, her fingers numb, her breath visible in the air. Dorothy had moved to a shelter, but there wasn't room for Lauren. Most shelters had age restrictions. You had to be 18 or older, or you'd get reported to Child Services. And if Child Services found her, they'd send her right back to Veronica as her legal guardian. Lauren had learned to avoid police, to keep her head down, to move before anyone asked too many questions. She'd become invisible by necessity. She found work where she could. Under-the-table jobs that didn't ask for ID or work permits. Washing dishes at a Chinese restaurant for 4 hours a night in exchange for $20 and leftover food. Cleaning office buildings with a crew that didn't care how old she was as long as she worked fast. Handing out flyers on street corners for $10 a day. The money went toward cheap food and storing her suitcase in a bus station locker, so she didn't have to carry it everywhere. She kept her laptop and her father's photos with her always, wrapped in plastic bags to protect them from rain. The laptop was her lifeline. At the library, during the hours they were open, she'd use their Wi-Fi to keep learning. She couldn't go to school, but she could educate herself. She watched free lectures online, read articles about business and finance, studied her father's old interviews, trying to understand how he'd built his success. One afternoon, while searching for information about estate law, she stumbled across something that made her heart stop. It was an old interview with her father from 5 years ago. He'd been asked about his business philosophy, and part of his answer had been about his daughter. "Everything I do is for Lauren," he'd said. "She's the smartest, kindest person I know. People see her quiet nature and think she's weak, but they're wrong. She's strong in ways most people never develop. She has integrity, character. Those things matter more than intelligence or talent. My daughter is going to change the world someday, and I'm just trying to build a foundation strong enough to support her when she does." Lauren had watched that video 3 times in the library, tears streaming down her face, not caring who saw. Her father had believed in her, had seen something in her that she'd never seen in herself. And Veronica was destroying everything he'd built, everything he'd planned, everything he'd sacrificed for. That night, sleeping in a doorway behind a closed bookstore, Lauren made a decision. She couldn't fight Veronica now. She had no resources, no standing, no power. But that didn't mean she had to give up. Her father had told her to fight for what was hers, and she would. Just not today. Not this month. Maybe not even this year. But someday. She would survive this. She would learn everything she could. She would become someone who couldn't be erased or ignored or discredited. And when she was ready, when she had the strength and resources and knowledge, she would come back and reclaim everything her father had left her. It was the first time since being thrown out that she'd thought beyond the next meal or the next safe place to sleep. It was the first time she'd let herself imagine a future. The promise felt impossible. She was 16, homeless, alone, and completely powerless. But it was also the only thing that made sense. The only path forward that honored her father's memory and his last words to her. Remember your promise. Fight for what's yours. She would fight, just not the way anyone expected. The next morning, Lauren went to the library as usual. But instead of just reading randomly or watching videos, she started planning. She made lists, researched programs for homeless youth, looked into online education options, studied business strategies and success stories of people who'd built themselves up from nothing. One name kept appearing in her searches, the Cornerstone Foundation, a nonprofit that provided scholarships, mentorship, and support for young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. They specifically helped kids who'd aged out of foster care or were experiencing homelessness. The application was extensive. Essays, documentation, recommendations. Most of it Lauren couldn't provide. She had no permanent address, no school transcripts she could access, no adults who'd vouch for her. But there was an emergency contact email for special circumstances. Lauren spent 3 hours writing an email explaining her situation. She kept it factual, not emotional. Explained about her father's death, the theft accusations, her current situation. She didn't ask for pity. She asked for a chance. She hit send not expecting anything. Organizations like that probably got thousands of requests. Why would they care about one homeless teenage girl with an unbelievable story? But it was action. It was fighting, even if the fight seemed pointless. 3 weeks later, while Lauren was washing dishes at the restaurant, trying to stay warm in the kitchen's steam, she got an email response on her laptop during her library visit. Dear Lauren, your situation has been reviewed by our emergency intervention team. We'd like to meet with you. Please respond with a time and place where you feel safe meeting. It was signed by someone named Catherine Torres, Director of Youth Services. Lauren read the email 5 times, certain she was misunderstanding. They wanted to meet with her. They'd actually read her email and responded. Her hands were shaking as she typed a response. She didn't know it yet, but that email was the first domino. The first small piece of the impossible future she'd promised herself. The first crack in the wall that Veronica had built around her. Everything was about to change. But first, it was going to get so much worse. Lauren met Catherine Torres at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the library. She'd spent an hour in the library bathroom trying to make herself presentable, washing her face and hands, smoothing down her hair, putting on the cleanest clothes she had. She still looked like what she was, a homeless teenager, but at least she didn't smell like the streets. Catherine was younger than Lauren expected, maybe early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that didn't look away when they met Lauren's. She was already seated when Lauren arrived, 2 cups of coffee on the table. Lauren, she stood, extending her hand. I'm Catherine. Please sit. I got you a coffee. And a sandwich if you're hungry. The sandwich sat wrapped on the table. Lauren tried to act like she wasn't starving, like she hadn't been dreaming about food for the past 12 hours. Thank you. Let's skip the small talk, Catherine said once Lauren sat down. I read your email. I also did some research. Your father was Henry Mitchell. He died 3 months ago. His will left everything to you in trust. And according to public records, you've been reported as a runaway with suspected behavioral issues. Lauren's throat tightened. That's what she wants everyone to think. I'm not everyone. Catherine pulled out a tablet and opened a file. I've been doing this work for 8 years. I've seen every kind of family situation you can imagine. What you described in your email, the planted evidence, the false accusations, the systematic isolation, it's a classic case of financial abuse. Someone wants you out of the picture so they can access your inheritance. Hope flared in Lauren's chest for the first time in months. Can you help me? Can you talk to the executor or get me a lawyer or... It's complicated. Catherine set down the tablet. You're a minor. Legally, Veronica is your guardian. If we intervene directly, she could claim we're harboring a runaway. That puts our entire organization at risk. The hope died as quickly as it had sparked. So you can't help me. I didn't say that. Catherine leaned forward. What I can do is provide you with resources outside the legal system. Education, job training, a safe place to stay. We have a residential program for at-risk youth, but it's in California. You'd have to relocate. California? Lauren's mind raced. But my father's estate is here. The company, the lawyers, everything. If I leave, Veronica wins. If you stay on the streets through winter, you might not survive to fight for anything. Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. I've seen kids die out there, Lauren. From exposure, from violence, from things that shouldn't happen to anyone, especially not 16-year-olds. Your father left you an inheritance, yes. But he'd want you alive to claim it. Lauren picked up the sandwich with shaking hands. She hadn't realized how much she'd been hoping for a quick fix, for someone to swoop in and solve everything. But Catherine was right. Survival came first. What would I have to do? She asked. Come to California. Enter our residential program. Finish high school through our accredited online academy. Learn job skills. We'll provide housing, food, education, and counseling. After you turn 18, you'll be legally independent and can pursue your inheritance claim from a position of stability rather than desperation. It made sense. It was probably the smartest option she had. But leaving felt like abandoning her father's legacy, like letting Veronica win. Can I think about it? Lauren asked. Of course, but don't take too long. Winter's coming fast, and I'd rather get you somewhere safe before the really cold weather hits. Catherine gave Lauren a burner phone before they parted, programmed with her direct number. Call me when you decide, or if you need anything before then. And Lauren, eat the sandwich. You don't have to pretend you're not hungry. Lauren had walked out of that coffee shop with the sandwich, the phone, and something she hadn't had in months, options. It wasn't much, but it was more than nothing. That night, she'd allowed herself to imagine it. California. A real bed. Regular meals. School. Safety. It sounded like heaven compared to sleeping in doorways and scrounging for food. But over the next few days, as she continued her routine, working odd jobs, studying at the library, surviving hour by hour, she kept thinking about her father. About his last words. About the video where he'd said she would change the world someday. How could she change anything if she ran away? She was still wrestling with the decision when she discovered what Veronica had done with the company. It was another overheard conversation, this time at the restaurant where she washed dishes. Two businessmen eating dinner were discussing a recent merger. One of them mentioned Mitchell Luxury Automotive. Henry's widow is really turning things around, one said. She's brought in new management, restructured the whole operation. Stock prices are up 15% since she took over. Didn't he leave the company to his daughter? Technically, yeah. But the daughter's gone and someone has to run things. The board voted to give Veronica interim control until the estate issues are resolved. Smart move, if you ask me. She's got a better head for business than anyone expected. Lauren had nearly dropped the dish she was washing. Veronica was running her father's company. The business he'd built from nothing. The legacy he'd intended for Lauren. And she was being praised for it, celebrated for stepping up in a crisis. Later that night, Lauren used the library computers to dig deeper. The business news was full of stories about Veronica Mitchell's successful transition to leadership. She'd restructured the management team, cutting costs and increasing efficiency. She'd given interviews about carrying on her late husband's vision. She'd even started a charitable foundation in Henry's name, donating to causes he'd cared about. On paper, she looked like the perfect widow, grieving but strong, honoring her husband's memory while moving the company forward. Everything a business community could want. And buried in the legal notices section of one article was a small paragraph. The estate of Henry Mitchell remains in dispute as the primary beneficiary, daughter Lauren Mitchell, has been declared missing. Legal proceedings are underway to determine appropriate management of assets in her absence. They were going to take it all. Slowly, legally, systematically. Every day Lauren stayed gone was another day Veronica could build her case that she was the responsible one, the capable one, the rightful heir to Henry's empire. But what could Lauren do? She was 16, homeless, and completely discredited. Even if she showed up tomorrow and tried to claim her inheritance, who would believe her over Veronica? Who would take seriously a dirty, desperate teenager with theft accusations hanging over her head? Catherine was right. She needed to survive first. Build herself up. Become someone who couldn't be dismissed or ignored. That night, Lauren called Catherine on the burner phone. I'll go to California, she said. When can I leave? The relief in Catherine's voice was evident. I'll arrange transportation for next week. You're making the right choice, Lauren. Lauren wasn't sure about that. But she was sure about one thing. She couldn't fight Veronica from a position of weakness. She needed strength, education, resources. She needed to become the person her father had believed she could be. The week before she was supposed to leave, Lauren went back to her father's grave one last time. The cemetery was across town, and it took her 2 hours to walk there. The November cold bit through her thin jacket, but she barely noticed. She had to say goodbye properly. Had to explain why she was leaving. The gravestone was new, black granite with gold lettering. Henry Mitchell, beloved father and visionary. His legacy lives on. Lauren knelt in the grass, not caring that the cold ground soaked through her jeans. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered. "I'm sorry I can't fight for the company right now. I'm sorry I'm letting her win. But I promise I'll come back. I promise I'll make you proud. I just need time." The wind picked up, rustling through the bare trees. Lauren stayed there for almost an hour, remembering her father's voice, his laugh, the way he used to call her his legacy. She was about to leave when she noticed something. Fresh flowers on the grave. Expensive roses in a crystal vase. There was a card attached. Lauren pulled it out with shaking hands. "Dearest Henry, I miss you every day. I'm taking care of everything, just like you would have wanted. Our family is strong. Your memory guides everything I do. All my love, Veronica." Our family. Not our daughter. Not Lauren. Just our family, meaning Veronica and her children. Lauren had been completely erased. She left the cemetery with something cold and hard settling in her chest. It wasn't quite anger yet. It was determination crystallizing into something unbreakable. Veronica thought she'd won. Thought she'd successfully removed the obstacle between her and Henry's fortune. She was rewriting history, claiming a legacy that wasn't hers, building a reputation on foundations that Lauren's father had laid. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd assumed that throwing Lauren out would destroy her. That poverty and homelessness would break her spirit completely. That a 16-year-old girl couldn't possibly come back from losing everything. Veronica didn't understand that sometimes the only way to build real strength is to lose everything first. Sometimes you have to be stripped down to nothing before you can rebuild yourself into something unshakable. Lauren walked away from that cemetery different than when she'd arrived. The scared, desperate girl who'd been thrown out 3 months ago was gone. In her place was someone harder, smarter, more focused. California wasn't running away. It was strategic retreat. It was building an army when you couldn't win the battle in front of you. It was playing the long game. Her father had been a businessman. He'd understood patience, strategy, timing. He'd taught her that the best victories weren't the loud ones. They were the ones where you built something so solid that no one could tear it down. That's what Lauren would do. She'd go to California. She'd finish school. She'd learn everything she could about business, about law, about how to build empires and protect them. She'd become someone so undeniably successful that no one could question her right to her father's legacy. And then, when she was ready, she'd come home. Not as a scared 16-year-old with nothing to her name, but as someone Veronica would never see coming. The day before she left, Lauren went to the library one last time. She printed out every article she could find about Veronica's management of the company. Every interview, every business decision, every charitable donation. She saved them all in a folder on her laptop. Evidence. Documentation. A paper trail of everything Veronica was doing with assets that weren't legally hers. Dorothy found her that evening at their usual spot behind the bookstore. "Heard you're leaving," the older woman said, settling down with the blanket she always carried. "How did you know? You've got that look. Like you're already somewhere else." Dorothy studied her with wise, tired eyes. "Where you headed?" "California. A program that helps kids like me." "Good. This ain't no life for a child." Dorothy reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in newspaper. "Here. For your journey." It was a small leather journal, worn but intact. "I can't take this," Lauren said. I need you to take it and write your story down," Dorothy interrupted. "Whatever you're running from or running toward, you write it down. Don't let anyone tell you it didn't happen the way you know it did. You keep your truth safe." Lauren had hugged her then, this woman who'd shown her kindness when she had nothing to gain from it. "Thank you. For everything. You're gonna do big things, baby girl. I can see it in you. You got a light in you that this world tried to put out, but it's still burning. Don't you let nobody dim it." The next morning, Catherine picked Lauren up in a van with 2 other teenagers who were also being relocated to the California program. Lauren took one last look at the city where she'd lost everything. She'd be back. That was a promise. But first, she had to become someone worth coming back as. California was everything Lauren needed and nothing she expected. The Cornerstone Foundation's residential program was housed in a converted office building in Oakland. 30 teenagers lived there, each one with a story that could break your heart if you let it. Kids who'd aged out of foster care, runaways escaping abuse, young people who'd lost everything and were trying to build something from the wreckage. Lauren shared a room with 2 other girls. It was small, clean, and safe. She had a bed with actual sheets, a locker for her belongings, 3 meals a day in the communal dining hall. It felt like luxury after months on the streets. The program was structured but not restrictive. Morning classes through their online academy, afternoon job training or internships, evening study sessions and counseling. Weekends were free time, though most residents stayed close to the building. They'd all learned that the outside world wasn't particularly kind to kids like them. Catherine checked on Lauren weekly. "How are you adjusting?" "It's good," Lauren said, and meant it. For the first time in months, she wasn't constantly worried about where she'd sleep or what she'd eat. She could focus on something beyond survival. "Your teachers say you're excelling. Top marks in every subject." Lauren shrugged. "I have a lot of time to study." What she didn't tell Catherine was that she was studying far beyond the standard curriculum. Late at night, while her roommates slept, Lauren dove deep into business law, corporate governance, estate management. She watched lectures from top universities, read case studies about hostile takeovers and family business disputes, learned everything she could about protecting assets and fighting legal battles. She was building an arsenal. Knowledge was the only weapon she had. 3 months into the program, Lauren turned 17. No one knew it was her birthday except her. She spent it the same way she spent every day, studying, working her assigned job at a local nonprofit office, and planning for a future that still felt impossibly far away. But she was making progress. Small steps. She'd completed her junior year coursework in half the usual time. She was on track to graduate high school early. Her supervisors at the nonprofit had started giving her real responsibilities, impressed by her work ethic and intelligence. "You're going places, Lauren," her supervisor told her one afternoon. "Have you thought about college?" She had. Constantly. But college required money, and her inheritance was still locked away, controlled by an executor who thought she was a thief and a stepmother who wanted her erased. "I'm working on it," she said. That night, Lauren did what she'd been doing every week since arriving in California. She searched for news about Mitchell Luxury Automotive and Veronica Mitchell. Usually, it was the same kind of stories. Business expansion, charitable donations. Veronica positioned as the capable widow carrying on her husband's legacy. Each article was a knife in Lauren's gut, but she documented everything methodically. Tonight, though, there was something different. A Business Journal article titled, "Mitchell Automotive Announces Major Restructuring and Sale." Lauren's hands went cold as she read. Veronica Mitchell, interim CEO of Mitchell Luxury Automotive, announced today the sale of the company's 3 primary dealerships to automotive giant Henderson Group for an estimated $47 million. The sale, pending regulatory approval, represents a significant shift in the company's structure. Mrs. Mitchell cited the need to streamline operations and honor her late husband's vision of sustainable business practices. Lauren read it 3 times, her heart pounding harder each time. Veronica was selling the company. The business Henry had built from nothing. The dealerships he'd opened one by one over 20 years. The legacy he'd specifically left to Lauren. She was selling it. Lauren's fingers flew across the keyboard, searching for more information. She found the official press release, the regulatory filings, the business analysis articles. The sale was structured as an asset purchase. Henderson Group would acquire the dealerships, the property, the inventory. Veronica would retain certain intellectual property rights and legacy assets, plus the $47 million in proceeds. Proceeds that should have been Lauren's. But here was the clever part. The sale wasn't technically from the estate. Veronica had somehow gotten the board to approve restructuring the company first, separating it from the trust-held assets. The dealerships were being sold by Mitchell Automotive Holdings LLC, a new entity that Veronica controlled as interim CEO. It was legal gymnastics, moving assets out of the estate and into a structure where Veronica had authority to sell them before Lauren could ever claim her inheritance. And it was working. Lauren felt sick. She'd been in California for 3 months, focusing on school and survival, thinking she had time. Thinking the estate would be there when she was ready to fight for it. But Veronica wasn't waiting. She was systematically dismantling everything Henry had built, converting it to cash, and positioning herself to claim it all before Lauren could do anything about it. Lauren grabbed the burner phone and called Catherine, not caring that it was almost midnight. "Lauren, what's wrong?" "She's selling my father's company. The dealerships. Everything. Can she do that? Legally? Can she just sell everything that's supposed to be mine?" Catherine was quiet for a moment. "What exactly did you find?" Lauren explained the sale, the restructuring, the legal maneuvering. Catherine listened without interrupting. "I need you to send me everything you found," Catherine said finally. "Every article, every filing. I have a lawyer friend who specializes in estate law. Let me have her look at this." "But I'm 17. I'm in California. Even if it's illegal, what can I do about it? Let me make some calls." "Don't panic yet." But Lauren was already past panic. She was in free fall. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about her father's voice. "Everything I build is for you." He'd built those dealerships for her. Every deal, every expansion, every success, it was all meant to be Lauren's foundation. And Veronica was selling it off piece by piece. Catherine called back 2 days later. Lauren could tell from her voice that the news wasn't good. "I had my friend review the filings. It's complicated, but the short version is that Veronica's lawyer found a loophole. Because you're a missing minor with unresolved allegations against you, and because the business needs active management, the probate court granted Veronica emergency authority to make operational decisions. The sale technically falls under that authority." That's insane. It's not an operational decision, it's selling the entire company. The court filing argues that selling to a larger corporation ensures business continuity and protects jobs. It's positioned as responsible stewardship, not asset stripping. So she's just going to get away with it? She's going to sell everything my father built and keep the money. "The proceeds are supposed to go into the estate," Catherine said carefully. "But there are a lot of ways to siphon money from a transaction like this. Management fees, consulting contracts, expenses. By the time the dust settles, a significant portion of that $47 million could end up in Veronica's pocket rather than in trust for you." Lauren felt like she was drowning. "I should never have left. I should have stayed and fought." "Lauren, if you'd stayed, you'd be dead or in the system. This is terrible, but you're alive and getting stronger. That's what matters." But it didn't feel like what mattered. It felt like losing. It felt like her father had trusted her to protect his legacy, and she'd failed. Over the next week, Lauren became obsessed. She spent every free moment researching the sale, tracking down every detail she could find. She created spreadsheets tracking the assets, the timeline, the money trail. And that's when she found something that changed everything. She was digging through archived business filings, looking for anything that might help challenge the sale, when she stumbled across incorporation documents for Mitchell Automotive Holdings LLC, the entity Veronica had created to facilitate the sale. The LLC had been created 7 months ago, 4 months before Henry died. Lauren stared at the date, her mind racing. Why would Veronica create a separate holding company 4 months before Henry's death? He was the one who ran the business. He made those kinds of structural decisions. Unless he hadn't known about it. Lauren dug deeper. The LLC's registered agent was a law firm. Not Mr. Peterson's firm, a different one. She searched the firm's name and found they specialized in asset protection and estate planning. Her hands were shaking as she pulled up the LLC's original filing documents. They were public record, available through the state's business registry. The members listed on the original filing were Veronica Mitchell and James Peterson. Mr. Peterson, her father's trusted attorney, the executor of Henry's estate. He'd been in business with Veronica months before Henry died. Lauren felt like the ground had opened beneath her. She kept digging, pulling thread after thread, and what she found made her physically ill. The LLC had been created specifically to hold certain automotive assets transferred from Henry Mitchell. There were transfer documents dated 2 months before Henry's death, moving the 3 dealerships from his personal ownership into the LLC. But Henry had been sick then. He'd been in the hospital dying of pneumonia. How could he have authorized transferring millions of dollars in assets when he was sedated and barely conscious? Lauren found the answer in the signature on the transfer documents. It wasn't Henry's signature. It was signed on behalf of Henry Mitchell by Veronica Mitchell, attorney in fact pursuant to power of attorney dated. Power of attorney. Veronica had gotten Henry to give her power of attorney, probably framed as a practical measure in case something happened, and then used it to transfer his business assets into an LLC she controlled with his own attorney. While he was dying in a hospital bed, Lauren ran to the bathroom and threw up. When she could breathe again, she kept researching. She found more transfers. Henry's investment accounts had been moved. Real estate had been retitled. Bank accounts had been restructured. All of it done in those final weeks while Henry was sick. All of it signed by Veronica using power of attorney. All of it moving assets out of what would become the estate and into structures that Veronica and Mr. Peterson controlled. They'd robbed him while he was dying. And the will that left the entirety of the estate to Lauren? By the time Henry died, the estate was almost empty. Everything of value had already been moved. Lauren had been fighting for an inheritance that had been stolen before her father's heart even stopped beating. She printed everything. Every document, every filing, every suspicious transfer. She organized it chronologically, highlighting the pattern. The evidence was all there, hidden in plain sight in public records that no one had bothered to examine closely. But what could she do with it? She was 17, living in a youth program in California, with no money for lawyers and no legal standing to file anything. The people who'd stolen her inheritance included the executor, who was supposed to protect it. The system that should have helped her was the same system they'd used to rob her. Lauren called Catherine again, her voice shaking. I found something. About my father's estate. About what they did. She explained everything. The LLC. The transfers. Peterson's involvement. The systematic theft that had happened while Henry lay dying. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. This is serious, Lauren. If what you're saying is true, this is fraud. Probably elder abuse. Possibly even criminal. I have proof. Documents, filings, everything. But I don't know what to do with it. Who would even listen to me? Send me everything. Let me show it to my lawyer friend. This is beyond estate disputes now. If we can prove Peterson was helping Veronica steal from your father, he could be disbarred. He'd lose his position as executor. Hope flickered in Lauren's chest, fragile and desperate. And then what? Even if he's removed, I'm still a minor. I still have no way to stop the sale or get the assets back. One step at a time. First, we document everything and find someone who can investigate properly. The California Bar Association takes fraud seriously. So does the FBI when it involves this much money. FBI. The word made it real in a way nothing else had. This wasn't just a family dispute about an inheritance. This was organized theft. Conspiracy. Fraud on a massive scale. Her father hadn't just died. He'd been robbed on his deathbed by the people he'd trusted most. Lauren sent Catherine every document she'd found. Then she sat in her room and cried for the first time since leaving California. Not soft tears. Huge, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken inside her. Her roommate, a girl named Jazz who usually kept to herself, sat down on the bed next to her. You okay? My father, Lauren managed between sobs. They stole from him while he was dying. His wife and his lawyer. They took everything and he never knew. Jazz put an arm around her shoulders. That's heavy. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if I even can. Maybe you can't fix it right now. But you're still here. You're still fighting. That counts for something. Lauren wanted to believe that. But sitting in a small room in Oakland while Veronica finalized the sale of her father's company 2,000 miles away, it felt like fighting wasn't enough. It felt like she was losing everything all over again. Catherine called the next day with an update. My lawyer friend is reviewing everything. She thinks you have a strong case for fraud, but pursuing it will be complicated. Peterson is well connected. Veronica's positioned herself as a sympathetic widow. And you're a minor who's been out of state for months. They'll argue you abandoned your inheritance. I didn't abandon anything. I was thrown out and I was trying to survive. I know, but that's what they'll say. We need to be strategic about this. Strategic. Lauren was so tired of being strategic. Of waiting. Of being patient while Veronica dismantled her father's legacy piece by piece. How long? Lauren asked. How long until I can actually do something? You turn 18 in 11 months. Once you're legally an adult, you'll have standing to file your own claims, hire your own lawyers, challenge the estate management. Until then, anything we do has to go through the system that's already failed you. 11 months. The sale would be finalized in 3. By the time Lauren turned 18, there might be nothing left to fight for. That night, Lauren sat in the common room with her laptop, staring at the business articles about the sale. Henderson Group was praising Veronica for her smooth transition of leadership and commitment to preserving Henry Mitchell's vision. There was a quote from Veronica. Henry would be proud to see his business joining the Henderson family. This sale secures jobs, serves customers, and honors the legacy he worked so hard to build. I only wish he could be here to see it. Lauren's vision blurred with rage. Veronica was rewriting history, making herself the hero of a story where she was the villain. She'd stolen, lied, and manipulated her way into controlling everything Henry had built, and the world was applauding her for it. And Lauren, the actual heir, the one her father had loved and protected and planned for, was invisible. A footnote. A troubled teenager who'd run away and didn't matter. But she did matter. And this wasn't over. Lauren pulled up a blank document and started writing. Everything she knew. Everything she'd found. A complete timeline of the theft, the fraud, the systematic destruction of her father's estate. She documented every transfer, every suspicious transaction, every lie Veronica had told. She couldn't file lawsuits yet. Couldn't hire lawyers or challenge the sale. But she could build a record. She could create documentation that would survive even if something happened to her. Dorothy had told her to keep her truth safe. That's exactly what Lauren would do. She would document everything. She would preserve the evidence. And when the time came, when she had the standing and resources to fight, she would make sure everyone knew exactly what Veronica and Peterson had done. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Remember your promise. Fight for what's yours. She was fighting. It didn't look like winning yet. It felt like drowning. But she wasn't giving up. Not now. Not ever. The sale went through on a Tuesday in March. Lauren found out the same way everyone else did, through a business press release. Henderson Group officially acquired Mitchell Luxury Automotive's 3 dealerships for $47 million. The announcement praised Veronica's leadership and promised continued excellence in customer service. There was a photo accompanying the press release. Veronica stood in front of the flagship dealership, the one Henry had opened 22 years ago when Lauren was just a baby. She was smiling, shaking hands with Henderson Group's CEO, looking every bit the successful businesswoman. In the background of the photo, Lauren could see the sign her father had been so proud of. Mitchell Luxury Automotive, a family legacy since 2003. Except it wasn't a family legacy anymore. It was just gone. Lauren stared at that photo for hours, until her eyes burned and her vision blurred. Catherine's lawyer friend had filed complaints with the Bar Association about Peterson's conduct. She'd flagged the suspicious transfers to the probate court. She'd done everything she could do without a client who had legal standing. But the sale still went through. The judge had ruled that the complaints didn't warrant halting a major business transaction, especially since the proceeds were technically going into estate accounts that Peterson controlled as executor. Never mind that Peterson was the one being accused of fraud. Never mind that he was holding money he'd helped steal. The legal system moved slowly, and business moved fast. Veronica had won. Lauren closed her laptop and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her roommate Jazz was at work. The other roommate, Kennedy, was in class. Lauren was alone with the crushing weight of complete failure. She'd promised her father she'd fight for what was hers. She'd promised herself she'd reclaim his legacy. But promises didn't mean anything when you were powerless. The days after the sale blurred together. Lauren went through the motions, attending classes, working her job, eating meals, but she felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside her and left just the shell. Catherine noticed. Lauren, I'm worried about you. You've stopped engaging in counseling sessions. Your teachers say you're not turning in assignments. Talk to me. What's the point? Lauren heard herself say. I did everything right. I survived. I studied. I found evidence. And it didn't matter. She still won. This isn't over. The Bar investigation is still ongoing. The probate court will take years. And by then there won't be anything left to recover. Lauren felt so tired. My father built something real. Something that mattered. And I let it get destroyed. You were 16 and homeless. You didn't let anything happen. This was done to you. But it didn't feel that way. It felt like Lauren had failed the one person who'd ever believed in her. That night, she did something she hadn't done in months. She looked up Veronica's social media. It was a mistake. Veronica's Instagram was full of photos from a recent vacation to the Bahamas. Her and Marcus and Shayla on a yacht, drinking champagne, celebrating new beginnings and honoring family legacy. There were comments from people Lauren's father had known. business associates, friends. All of them congratulating Veronica on her strength, her success, her grace in handling such a difficult transition. No one mentioned Lauren. No one asked where Henry's daughter was, or whether she was okay. She'd been erased so completely that people had forgotten she existed. Lauren scrolled through months of posts. Veronica had been living her best life while Lauren slept on streets. Designer clothes. Expensive restaurants. The mansion that used to be Lauren's home, now redecorated in Veronica's style with no trace of Henry or Lauren left. There was a post from 2 weeks ago that made Lauren's stomach turn. A photo of Shayla standing in what used to be Lauren's bedroom. The caption read, "Finally finished redecorating Shayla's new suite. She's been wanting this space for years." They'd given her room to Shayla. They'd erased even that. Lauren kept scrolling, torturing herself, until she found something that stopped her cold. A photo from 4 months ago. Veronica, Marcus, and Shayla at a lawyer's office. The caption, "Finalizing some important family business. Henry would be so proud of how we're protecting his legacy." The date on the post was 2 days before Henry died. Lauren zoomed in on the photo. In the background, barely visible, was a document on the desk. She could just make out the header, Power of Attorney. They'd taken that photo while getting Henry to sign away his power of attorney, while he was sick and vulnerable and trusting Veronica to help. And they'd smiled for a camera, celebrating what they were doing. Lauren ran to the bathroom and threw up again. When she came back, shaking and empty, there was an email waiting. From Mr. Peterson's office. "Dear Miss Mitchell, this correspondence is to inform you that as of March 15th, the sale of Mitchell Luxury Automotive Assets has been completed. Proceeds in the amount of $47 million have been deposited into estate accounts pending final distribution. As executor, I have determined that your current status as a missing minor with unresolved legal issues makes it inappropriate to distribute funds at this time. Upon your 18th birthday, should you wish to make a claim to estate assets, you may petition the court through proper legal channels. Until that time, all estate assets will be managed in accordance with my fiduciary duties. Sincerely, James Peterson, Executor." Lauren read it 3 times. The message was clear. You're not getting anything. Not now. Not easily. Maybe not ever. She'd been holding on to the idea that once she turned 18, once she had legal standing, she could fight back. But Peterson was already building barriers. He'd make her go through courts, file petitions, prove her identity and her claims. He'd make it as difficult and expensive as possible. And she had no money for lawyers. No resources to fight a prolonged legal battle. No way to challenge an executor who had $47 million in estate funds to pay for the best attorney's money could buy. Catherine tried to help. "We can find you pro bono legal representation." "We can." "Can what?" Lauren's voice came out sharper than she intended. "I'm 17. I have no money, no proof of identity beyond a birth certificate, and I've been gone for over a year. Peterson will argue I abandoned my claim. Veronica will testify that I'm unstable, that I stole from them, that I can't be trusted with money. And I have no one to contradict them, because everyone who knew my father believes their version of events. The evidence you found isn't enough. We'd need forensic accountants, expert witnesses, years of litigation. Do you know what that costs? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money I don't have and can't get because the person who controls my inheritance is the one who stole it." Catherine didn't have an answer for that, because there wasn't one. The next few weeks were the darkest of Lauren's life. Darker even than the streets, because at least then she'd had hope. She'd believed that survival was progress, that building herself up would matter. But what was the point of surviving if she'd lost everything that mattered anyway? She stopped going to classes, stopped showing up for her job, spent her days in bed or staring at nothing. The program counselor tried to intervene, but Lauren wouldn't talk. What could she say? That she'd failed her father? That his legacy was gone, and it was her fault for not being strong enough, smart enough, fast enough to protect it? Jazz tried to help in her own way. She'd sit with Lauren sometimes, not saying anything, just present. One night she brought Lauren a plate of food from the dining hall. "You need to eat," Jazz said. "I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten in 2 days. You need to eat." Lauren looked at the food and felt nothing. "Why?" "So I can keep living this incredibly purposeful life. Because giving up is letting them win completely." Jazz sat on the edge of the bed. "Look, I don't know your whole story, but I know what it's like when people take everything from you. When the system fails and the adults who are supposed to protect you are the ones hurting you. And I know that the only power you have left is choosing not to disappear. I already disappeared. No one even knows I exist. You know you exist. That's enough to start with. But it didn't feel like enough. It felt like nothing. Lauren forced herself to eat a few bites, more to make Jazz leave than because she wanted to. When she was alone again, she pulled out her father's photo from her suitcase. The one she'd carried through everything. He was smiling in it, his arm around 8-year-old Lauren at some company event. She remembered that day. He'd been so proud, showing her off to his employees, telling everyone she was going to run the company someday. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered to the photo. "I tried. I really tried. But I wasn't strong enough." Her phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "Lauren, I need you to call me. It's important." Lauren almost didn't call back. She was tired of important news that turned out to be more ways she was losing. But something in Catherine's message made her dial. "What is it?" Lauren asked when Catherine answered. "I just got a call from my lawyer friend. The bar investigation into Peterson found evidence of misconduct. They're moving forward with disciplinary proceedings." Lauren felt a flicker of something. Not quite hope, just slightly less despair. What does that mean? It means he could be disbarred, which means he'd be removed as executor. And then what? Someone else manages the estate? That doesn't get me my father's company back. That doesn't undo the sale. No, Catherine admitted. But it might freeze the estate distribution until a new executor is appointed. And it might open the door to investigating the transfers more thoroughly. Might. Everything is always might. Lauren felt the flicker die. They've already won, Catherine. The company is sold. The money is in accounts Peterson controls. Even if he gets disbarred, Veronica is still out there living in my father's house with my father's money, telling everyone how she's honoring his legacy while I'm nobody. You're not nobody. I have no home, no family, no money, no future beyond this program. When I age out, I'll have nothing. Tell me how that's not nobody. Catherine was quiet for a moment. Come to my office tomorrow. Please. I want to show you something. Lauren almost said no. But she was so tired of her own thoughts, her own spiral of despair, that she agreed. The next day, she dragged herself to Catherine's office. Catherine pulled up something on her computer and turned the screen toward Lauren. It was an application for a scholarship program at UC Berkeley. Full ride. Housing included. For students from disadvantaged backgrounds who demonstrated exceptional resilience. I want you to apply, Catherine said. Lauren looked at the application and felt nothing. Why? Because giving up on your father's company doesn't mean giving up on everything. You're brilliant, Lauren. Even in the middle of all this, your test scores are exceptional. Your teachers say when you're engaged, you're the best student they've ever had. You have a chance at a real education, a real future. Based on what? I don't even have high school transcripts from before. I'm a ghost in the system. You have transcripts from our program. You have recommendation letters I'm prepared to write. You have a story of survival that admissions committees will find compelling. A story where I lost everything and everyone who hurt me won. Real inspiring. Catherine leaned forward. You're 17 years old and you're giving up. The Lauren who survived on the streets for months wouldn't have given up. The Lauren who found evidence of fraud while living in a youth program wouldn't have given up. What happened to her? She realized none of it mattered. Lauren stood up. They're going to win. Veronica gets my father's money. Peterson might get disbarred, but he'll retire wealthy. Marcus and Shayla get to live in my home and post pictures about their blessed life. And I get nothing. No matter what I do, I get nothing. You get to decide who you become. They can't take that. They already took everything that mattered. Lauren walked out of Catherine's office and back to her room. She lay down and stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of complete defeat crushing down on her. She'd lost. Totally. Completely. Irrevocably. Her father's legacy was gone. The company he'd built was owned by strangers. The money he'd left her was controlled by a thief. The family home had been gutted of every trace of him and her. And Lauren was nobody. A damaged teenager in a program for throwaway kids, with no family and no future beyond what charity could provide. This was rock bottom. Not the streets. Not the hunger or the cold or the fear. This. Knowing she'd been defeated by people who were smaller and meaner and less deserving, and there was nothing she could do about it. That night, Lauren had a dream. Her father was sitting at his desk, the way he used to when she was little. She was 8 years old again, climbing into his lap. Did I disappoint you? Dream Lauren asked. Never, Dream Henry said. You could never disappoint me. But I lost everything you built. No, sweetheart. You lost things. Things can be rebuilt. You didn't lose yourself. You didn't lose your integrity or your kindness or your strength. Those are what matter. But they won. Veronica and Peterson and all of them. They won. Her father smiled, the same gentle smile she remembered. The game's not over yet, baby girl. You're still playing. That means you haven't lost. She woke up crying, her roommates still asleep around her. The dream felt so real she could almost smell her father's cologne, almost feel his arms around her. But he was gone. And everything he'd built was gone. And Lauren was alone. She pulled out Dorothy's journal and started writing. Everything she felt. All the rage and grief and hopelessness. She wrote until her hand cramped and her tears blurred the ink. When she finished, she felt empty but somehow lighter. Like she'd purged poison from her system. She looked at the scholarship application Catherine had sent her. UC Berkeley. It was a good school. A real opportunity. Not the legacy her father had planned for her, but something. Maybe Catherine was right. Maybe deciding who she'd become was the only power she had left. It wasn't much. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like accepting scraps when she should have had a feast. But it was something. And something was more than the nothing she'd been drowning in. Lauren opened her laptop and started filling out the application. Not because she believed it would lead anywhere, but because the alternative was giving up completely, and some stubborn part of her, the part that had survived homelessness and betrayal and complete abandonment, refused to do that. She'd lost her father's company, lost her inheritance, lost the life she was supposed to have. But she was still here, still breathing, still moving forward even when forward felt impossible. And maybe, just maybe, that counted for something, even if she couldn't see it yet. The acceptance letter from UC Berkeley came in May, 2 weeks before Lauren's 18th birthday. She'd almost forgotten she'd applied. The scholarship application had been something to do with her hands, a way to pretend she had a future when everything felt over. She hadn't actually believed anything would come of it. Catherine called her into the office, grinning wider than Lauren had ever seen. You got in. Full ride. Housing, books, stipend for living expenses. Everything. Lauren stared at the letter, reading the words over and over. They accepted me. They didn't just accept you. They gave you the Cornerstone Scholarship. It's their most prestigious award. Full 4 years, guaranteed as long as you maintain a 3.0 GPA. Catherine's eyes were bright. Lauren, this is everything. This is your chance. A chance at what, though? Lauren wanted to feel excited, wanted to feel like this mattered. But all she could think was that she was going to college on charity, while Veronica lived in luxury, bought with her father's money. Still, it was something. It was a path forward. When does it start? Lauren asked. Fall semester. You have the summer to prepare. Catherine handed her another packet. And I've arranged something else. An internship. If you want it. The internship was with a nonprofit called Rising Phoenix Initiative. They provided business mentorship and microloans to women entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. The founder, a woman named Diana Chun, had started the organization after rebuilding her own life following a bankruptcy and divorce that left her homeless at 40. She wants to meet you, Catherine said. I showed her your application essay. She was impressed. The meeting was scheduled for the following week. Lauren showed up at Rising Phoenix's small office in downtown Oakland, wearing the only professional clothes she owned. A blazer and pants from the program's donation closet that almost fit. Diana Chin was in her mid-50s, with silver hair cut short and eyes that seemed to see right through people. She looked at Lauren for a long moment before speaking. Catherine sent me your story, Diana said. Your father's estate. What happened to you? I'm sorry. Lauren nodded, not trusting herself to speak. I'm not offering you this internship out of pity, Diana continued. I'm offering it because you have something most business school graduates don't have. You've been destroyed and you're still standing. That's the foundation of real strength. I don't feel strong. You wouldn't. Strength doesn't feel like strength when you're building it. It feels like surviving another day. Diana pulled out a file. This internship isn't glamorous. You'll be helping women write business plans, reviewing loan applications, sometimes just listening to their stories. Most of them have been where you are. Lost everything. Starting over from nothing. What if I don't know how to help them? You help them by showing up. By proving that coming back from nothing is possible. Diana leaned back in her chair. I read about what your stepmother did. The fraud, the theft, the systematic destruction of your inheritance. That kind of betrayal either breaks you permanently or forges you into something unbreakable. You get to choose which one happens. It was the same thing Catherine had been saying. The same choice Lauren had been avoiding. Stay broken or fight back. Accept the narrative or rewrite it. I don't know how to rewrite it, Lauren admitted. She won. The company's gone. The money's gone. I can't get any of it back. So build something new. Diana's voice was matter of fact. Your father built an empire from nothing. You have his DNA, his intelligence, his drive. Why are you so focused on reclaiming what was stolen instead of creating something even better? The question hit Lauren like cold water. She'd spent a year focused entirely on her inheritance, on what she'd lost, on what had been taken. It had never occurred to her that she could build something of her own. I'm 18, Lauren said. I have no money, no connections, no. Neither did your father when he started. Neither did I. Neither did half the women we work with. Diana slid a business card across the desk. This internship starts next week if you want it. Think about it. Lauren took the card and left. She walked for hours through Oakland, thinking about what Diana had said. Build something new. Create something even better. It felt impossible. But then again, surviving homelessness at 16 had felt impossible too. Getting into Berkeley had felt impossible. Every step she'd taken over the past year had felt impossible until she'd done it. She started the internship the following Monday. The work was exactly what Diana had described. Lauren helped women fill out loan applications, reviewed business plans, sat in on mentorship sessions. Most of the women were older than her, but they didn't treat her like a kid. They saw someone who understood struggle. One woman, Maria, was starting a catering business after her husband left her with 3 kids and no income. I spent 20 years making him dinner, she told Lauren. Now I'm going to make dinner for paying customers and build something that's mine. Another woman, Patricia, was launching a cleaning service. I cleaned houses for other people for 30 years. Made them rich while I stayed poor. Not anymore. This time I'm the boss. Their stories resonated with Lauren in ways she hadn't expected. These women had lost things too. Marriages, security, identities they'd built their lives around. But they weren't focused on what was gone. They were focused on what they could create. 2 months into the internship, Lauren met someone who would change everything. His name was James Okoye, and he came to Rising Phoenix as a guest speaker. He was 32, a successful tech entrepreneur who'd sold his first company for 8 figures and now spent most of his time investing in and mentoring young founders. Diana introduced him to the group. James started his first business in his college dorm room with $500 and a laptop. 10 years later, he sold it to Google. Now he's helping other people build their dreams. James spoke for an hour about his journey. He'd grown up in Atlanta, the son of Nigerian immigrants who worked multiple jobs to put him through school. He'd started coding in high school, built his first app in college, and turned it into a company that revolutionized mobile payments. But what struck Lauren wasn't the success story. It was what he said about failure. I failed 5 times before anything worked, James told the room. 5 complete disasters. Products no one wanted. Business models that made no sense. I lost money, lost partnerships, lost faith in myself. But each failure taught me something crucial. By the time I built the thing that worked, I knew exactly what not to do. After the talk, Lauren found herself standing in line to speak with him. She hadn't planned to, but something pulled her forward. When she reached the front of the line, James looked at her with genuine interest. What's your name? Lauren Mitchell. What do you do, Lauren? I'm starting at Berkeley in the fall. And I'm interning here. What are you studying? I don't know yet. Business, maybe. Or economics. She hesitated. My father was a businessman. He died and I lost everything he built. I'm trying to figure out how to build something new. James's expression shifted. Not to pity, but to recognition. That's a powerful motivation. What did your father do? He owned luxury car dealerships. 3 of them. Built the business from nothing over 20 years. And you lost them how? Lauren gave him the abbreviated version. Her father's death. Veronica's fraud. The theft of the estate. The sale of the company while she was powerless to stop it. James listened without interrupting. When she finished, he pulled out his phone. Give me your email address. Lauren recited it, confused. I'm sending you something, James said, typing. It's a reading list. Books about business, wealth building, legal strategy. Everything I wish someone had given me when I was starting out. He looked up from his phone. Your father's company is gone. That's true. But you have something more valuable than a company. What's that? You have a story that will make you invincible once you own it. James's voice was firm. Right now you see it as loss, as trauma, as something that happened to you. But once you transform that into purpose, into fuel, into the reason you build something incredible, no one will ever be able to touch you again. Lauren felt something shift inside her chest. A spark of something that might have been hope, or might have been anger, or might have been both. How do I do that? She asked. You start by deciding you're not a victim of your story. You're the author of what comes next. He handed her his business card. Stay in touch. I want to see what you build. That night, Lauren read through the entire list James had sent. 20 books. Everything from business strategy to legal frameworks to wealth psychology. She requested them all from the library and started reading. For the first time since her father died, Lauren felt like she was moving towards something instead of just away from pain. She was still angry about what Veronica had stolen, still hurt by the betrayal, still grieved the loss of her father's legacy. But she was beginning to understand what Diana and James were both telling her. She could spend her life trying to reclaim the past, or she could build a future so powerful that the past wouldn't matter. The choice was hers. Remain the girl who'd been destroyed, or become the woman who rose from the destruction stronger than before. Lauren thought about her father, about the video where he'd said she would change the world someday. He'd believed in her potential, not just her inheritance. He'd seen something in her that went beyond money or business or legacy. Maybe it was time she started seeing it too. She pulled out her laptop and started a new document. Not documentation of what had been stolen. Not evidence for legal battles she couldn't fight. Something different. A business plan. She didn't know what for yet. Didn't have all the pieces. But she started writing down ideas, observations, things she'd learned from her father and from her own experiences. There was power in helping people who'd been discarded. She'd seen it at Rising Phoenix. Women who'd been dismissed as worthless building thriving businesses. People who'd lost everything creating value from nothing. Lauren had lived that story. She understood it in her bones. What if that understanding could become something bigger? What if her experience of loss could help others navigate their own? The ideas were rough, barely formed. But they were hers. Not her father's legacy. Not what Veronica had stolen. Something new. Something that couldn't be taken because it didn't exist yet. She wrote until 3 a.m, her roommates sleeping around her, the possibility of a different future taking shape on the screen. By the time she stopped, Lauren had filled 20 pages with ideas, strategies, observations, and plans. It wasn't complete. It wasn't perfect. But it was a beginning. The next morning, she showed up to Catherine's office with a request. I want to start a business, Lauren said. I don't know exactly what yet, but I want to build something. And I want to learn everything I need to know to make sure no one can ever take it from me. Catherine's smile was bright with pride. Then let's get started. For the first time since her father died, Lauren felt like herself again. Not the girl who'd had everything. Not the girl who'd lost everything. Someone new. Someone being forged in fire into something stronger than she'd ever been. Veronica had taken her father's company. But she couldn't take this. She couldn't steal potential or determination or the choice to rise. That belonged to Lauren alone. And she was just getting started. 10 years changed everything. Lauren graduated from Berkeley at 21 with dual degrees in business and economics. She'd maintained a 4.0 while working 3 part-time jobs and building the foundation of what would become her life's work. The idea had come from her internship at Rising Phoenix. She'd seen how many women were trapped in the same cycle, losing everything to divorce, death, or betrayal, then struggling to rebuild because the systems were designed to keep them down. No credit, no collateral, no one willing to take a chance on them. Lauren had lived that story. She understood every obstacle, every barrier, every moment of crushing hopelessness. And she knew that what these women needed wasn't just money. They needed someone who believed they could rise again. She called it Second Chapter Foundation. The concept was simple. Provide business education, seed funding, and mentorship to women rebuilding their lives after devastating loss. No questions about their past. No judgment about how they'd ended up at rock bottom. Just practical help and genuine belief in their potential. Lauren started it with $5,000 she'd saved from her campus jobs and a lot of nerve. She ran it out of a shared office space, recruiting volunteer mentors and scraping together resources wherever she could find them. The first year, she helped 12 women start businesses. Small operations, a bakery, a bookkeeping service, a home healthcare company. But every single one of them survived past the crucial first year, and half of them were thriving. By year 2, Lauren had attracted the attention of donors who saw what she was building. By year 3, Second Chapter had expanded to 3 cities and helped over 100 women. By year 5, they were nationwide. The foundation wasn't just successful. It was transformative. The women Lauren helped weren't just building businesses. They were reclaiming their dignity, their power, their right to exist on their own terms. And Lauren was becoming known, not as the girl who'd been thrown out and forgotten, as the woman who'd turned devastation into purpose. She'd been featured in Forbes at 24. The new face of social entrepreneurship, the headline read. The article told her story, losing her father, losing everything, building something meaningful from the wreckage. She'd kept the details about Veronica vague. Family complications after my father's death led to a period of homelessness, she'd said in the interview. That experience showed me how quickly anyone can fall, and how difficult the systems make it to climb back up. She hadn't gone back home, hadn't confronted Veronica, hadn't tried to reclaim what had been stolen. She'd been too busy building something that actually mattered. But she'd never forgotten. Every success was another brick in a foundation that Veronica could never touch. Every woman she helped was proof that being discarded wasn't the end of the story. And then, at 26, Lauren met Marcus Reed. Not her stepbrother Marcus. A different Marcus. One who would change everything. She'd been invited to speak at a philanthropic summit in New York. Her session was on sustainable models for social impact, and the room was packed with nonprofit leaders, donors, and foundation executives. Marcus Reed was in the third row, taking notes. After her talk, he'd approached her with genuine curiosity in his eyes. That was brilliant. The way you've structured the loan repayment to fund future cohorts. It's self-sustaining. How did you design that? Lauren had explained her model, and they'd ended up talking for 2 hours. She'd learned that Marcus was the son of real estate magnate Christopher Reed, that he'd inherited his father's fortune at 25 and immediately redirected most of it toward philanthropic causes. He funded education initiatives, healthcare access programs, and economic development projects across the country. He was handsome in an understated way, with warm brown eyes and a smile that felt genuine. But what attracted Lauren wasn't his looks or his money. It was the way he listened. Really listened. Like what she was saying mattered. They'd stayed in touch after the summit. Emails at first, then calls, then visits when their travel schedules aligned. Marcus came to see Second Chapter's operation in Oakland. Lauren visited one of his education centers in Atlanta. 6 months after they met, over dinner in a small restaurant in Chicago where they'd both been for a conference, Marcus had said, "I think I'm falling in love with you." Lauren had frozen, her fork halfway to her mouth. "That's probably not a good idea." "Why not?" "Because I'm complicated. I have baggage. I have a family situation that's unresolved and messy. I have a past that made you who you are." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "Lauren, I've dated women who've never struggled for anything. They're lovely people, but they don't understand what it means to build something meaningful. You do. That's not baggage. That's foundation." She'd fallen for him over the next 6 months. Slowly, carefully, testing whether this was real or just another thing that could be taken away. But Marcus was patient. He showed up consistently. He supported her work without trying to take it over. He saw her as an equal, not a project. When he proposed, a year after that first dinner, Lauren had cried. Not sad tears. Grateful ones. She'd thought love was something she'd lost along with everything else. But here it was, offered freely by someone who knew her story and chose her anyway. They got engaged quietly, planning a small wedding for the following year. Marcus's connections in philanthropy and politics were extensive. His family had been major donors to both parties for generations. One of his close friends from college was now the Vice President of the United States. "He wants to meet you," Marcus told Lauren one evening. "He's been following Second Chapter's work. He thinks what you're doing could be a model for federal policy." That meeting had led to others. Lauren found herself consulting with policy advisors, testifying before congressional committees, helping shape legislation around economic support for displaced women. The vice president had become a genuine advocate for her work, citing Second Chapter as an example of effective public-private partnership. Which was how, at 28 years old, Lauren found herself planning a return to the city she'd left a decade ago. Second chapter was opening a new regional center there. It would be their largest operation yet, serving 5 states from a facility that would house classrooms, co-working spaces, and transitional housing for women in the program. The vice president had agreed to attend the ribbon-cutting ceremony. So had the mayor, several state legislators, and dozens of business leaders. It would be Second Chapter's biggest public event, and it would take place 3 blocks from the mansion where Veronica still lived. Lauren had been avoiding this homecoming for years. She'd built her empire everywhere except the place where she'd lost everything. But the real estate opportunity had been too perfect. A donated building in exactly the right location, offered by a donor who believed in the mission. So she'd accepted, and she'd started planning. Marcus had insisted on making it special. "This is your moment," he'd said. "You're coming home successful, powerful, and with a foundation that's changing lives. Let's make sure everyone sees it." He'd arranged for them to arrive by private jet. The vice president would travel with them, making it an official visit. There would be press coverage, photo opportunities, speeches. Lauren had agreed because she understood the strategic value. More visibility meant more donations, more impact, more women helped. But privately, she knew this was about more than strategy. This was about returning to the place where she'd been thrown away and showing everyone, showing Veronica, that being discarded had been the best thing that ever happened to her. The night before they left, Lauren couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about that last day at the mansion. 16 years old, standing on the steps with a suitcase, believing her life was over. If she could go back and tell that girl what was coming, would she? Would she want to spare her the pain, or would she understand that the pain was necessary to forge who she'd become? Marcus found her sitting by the window of their apartment, staring out at the San Francisco skyline. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, sitting beside her. "No, just first thoughts. Old thoughts." She leaned against him. "The last time I was there, I had nothing. I was nobody. I felt invisible. And now you're returning with a foundation worth tens of millions, a fiancé who adores you, and the Vice President of the United States as your escort." Marcus smiled. "I'd say that's a pretty good reversal. It's not about showing off." "I know. It's about showing up. There's a difference." He was right. This wasn't about revenge or rubbing her success in Veronica's face. It was about existing loudly and undeniably in a space where she'd been erased. It was about reclaiming her right to her own story. The flight the next day was surreal. Lauren sat in a private jet with Marcus and Vice President Daniel Thompson, discussing policy initiatives like it was the most natural thing in the world. 10 years ago, she'd been sleeping under bridges. Now she was consulting with one of the most powerful people in the country. "You should be proud," Daniel told her as they prepared to land. "What you've built is remarkable. And the fact that you did it after experiencing homelessness as a teenager makes it even more significant." "Thank you, sir. Please, it's Daniel. We're friends." He glanced at Marcus with a knowing smile. "Any friend of Marcus's is family. And someone doing the work you're doing deserves respect, not formality." The jet landed at a private airfield. There was already a motorcade waiting. Official vehicles for the vice president's security detail, plus the luxury car Marcus had arranged for them. As they drove toward the city, Lauren watched familiar landmarks pass by. The library where she'd spent countless hours. The restaurant where she'd washed dishes. The streets where she'd survived. Everything looked the same, but felt different. She was different. The motorcade pulled up to the new Second Chapter Center. Press was already there, cameras ready. A crowd had gathered, program participants, donors, local officials, curious onlookers. And standing near the back, her face frozen in shock, was Veronica. Lauren saw her stepmother the moment she stepped out of the car. Veronica looked older, her face carefully maintained, but showing strain around the eyes. She was dressed expensively, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists. Marcus and Shayla stood on either side of her, both looking equally stunned. For a moment, their eyes met across the crowd. Lauren saw the recognition dawn, saw the disbelief, saw the calculations running behind Veronica's eyes as she tried to process what she was seeing. The scared 16-year-old she'd thrown away had returned as someone she'd never imagined. Marcus Reed took Lauren's hand as they walked toward the building. The vice president walked on her other side. Cameras flashed. Reporters called out questions. Lauren kept her head high, her shoulders back, her expression calm. This was her moment. Her return. Her reclamation. Inside the building, the ribbon-cutting ceremony was set up. Lauren stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd that had gathered. Donors, politicians, business leaders, women from the program who'd traveled to be here. And in the back, Veronica, Marcus, and Shayla, forced to watch because leaving would be too obvious, too much of an admission that something was wrong. Lauren began to speak. 10 years ago, I was 16 years old and homeless in this city, she said, her voice steady and clear. I'd lost my father to pneumonia, lost my home to family betrayal, lost everything I thought defined my worth. She saw Veronica shift uncomfortably. I slept under bridges, went days without eating, wondered if I'd survive to see 17. Lauren paused, letting the words settle. But I did survive. And more than that, I learned something crucial. Being thrown away doesn't make you worthless. It just means someone else was too blind to see your value. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Second Chapter Foundation exists because I lived that story. Because I know what it's like to lose everything and have no one believe you can rebuild. Because I understand that sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you most. Veronica's face had gone pale. My father, Henry Mitchell, built a successful business in this city. He believed in creating value, in building legacy, and helping others rise. Lauren's voice strengthened. After his death, his business was sold. His assets were scattered. His memory was used to justify actions he never would have approved. She pulled out a document and held it up. But truth has a way of surviving. This is a report from the State Bar Association. 10 years ago, they investigated my father's estate executor for fraud and misconduct. The investigation took years, but it concluded 6 months ago. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. James Peterson was disbarred for his role in illegally transferring assets from my father's estate while my father was incapacitated. The transfers that allowed the sale of Mitchell Automotive were fraudulent. The power of attorney used to authorize them was obtained under false pretenses. Lauren looked directly at Veronica now. This report names co-conspirators who helped facilitate the fraud. People who profited from my father's death while claiming to honor his memory. Veronica looked like she might faint. People in the crowd were turning to look at her, recognition spreading. I didn't come back here for revenge, Lauren continued, her voice softening. I came back because this city is my home. Because my father loved this place and believed in building things that last. Second Chapter Foundation is my way of honoring what he taught me. That real legacy isn't about money or buildings. It's about how many people you help rise. She gestured to the women standing in the front rows. These are women who've been told they're worthless. That they can't rebuild. That they should accept whatever scraps life gives them. This center will tell them something different. That they have value. That they can create extraordinary things from nothing. That being broken is sometimes the first step to becoming unbreakable. The applause started small and built to something thunderous. People stood. The vice president was beaming. Marcus had tears in his eyes. And Veronica was pushing through the crowd toward the exit, her children following, their faces burning with shame. After the ceremony, reporters crowded around Lauren. Questions came rapid fire. Miss Mitchell, are you saying your stepmother committed fraud? I'm saying the legal system investigated and found misconduct. The details are public record. Will you be pressing charges? The state has already taken appropriate legal action. My focus is on building something positive, not punishing the past. What happened to your father's estate? That's being resolved through proper channels. What matters is that the truth is known. Lauren handled every question with grace and precision. She didn't attack Veronica directly. Didn't have to. The facts spoke for themselves, and the press would do the rest. That evening, Lauren stood in front of the mansion where she'd grown up. She didn't go in. Didn't need to. She just looked at it, remembering who she'd been the last time she stood here. Marcus came up beside her. You okay? Yeah. Lauren smiled. I'm better than okay. I spent so long thinking I needed to get this house back, to reclaim what was taken. But I don't. I built something better. Something that's actually mine. Something that helps people instead of just existing as a monument to one person's ego. Your father would be proud. I think he would be. Lauren took one last look at the mansion, then turned away. Let's go. We have a foundation to run and a wedding to plan. As they walked back to the car, Lauren felt something she hadn't felt in 10 years. Not victory, exactly. Not revenge. Something quieter and more powerful. Peace. She'd come home. Not as the broken girl who'd been thrown out, but as the woman who'd risen from those ashes. Not to reclaim the past, but to build a better future. And that was worth more than any inheritance ever could be. The story broke nationally within 48 hours. Vice President attends ribbon cutting, fraud scandal emerges, read one headline. Heiress returns after decade. Father's estate stolen while she survived homelessness, read another. By the third day, every major news outlet had covered some version of the story. The Bar Association's report became public record. Journalists dug into the details. They found the suspicious transfers. The power of attorney obtained while Henry was dying. The LLC created to move assets out of the estate. Peterson's role in facilitating everything. And they found Veronica's role too. Every interview where she'd claimed to be honoring Henry's legacy. Every charitable donation made with money that wasn't legally hers. Every lie she'd told about Lauren being a troubled runaway. The court of public opinion moved faster than any legal proceeding. Within a week, Veronica had resigned from the boards she'd been serving on. The charitable foundation she'd created in Henry's name quietly dissolved. Invitations to society events stopped coming. Marcus and Shayla tried to distance themselves, releasing a statement claiming they'd been unaware of their mother's actions. But the photos from Veronica's social media told a different story. All those years of luxury, funded by stolen assets while Lauren slept on streets. The mansion went up for sale 2 months later. Veronica couldn't afford to maintain it. The Bar Association's findings had triggered audits, investigations, clawback provisions. The $47 million from the dealership sale was frozen pending litigation. Legal fees were mounting. The empire Veronica had built on Henry's stolen legacy was crumbling. Lauren watched it happen from a distance. She didn't gloat. Didn't give interviews about Veronica's downfall. When reporters asked, she simply said, "I'm focused on the future, not the past." But privately, she felt a deep sense of vindication. Not because Veronica was suffering, but because the truth was known. Her father's real legacy, the man who'd built something meaningful, who'd loved his daughter, who'd been betrayed in his final days, was being restored. 3 months after the ribbon cutting, Lauren's lawyer called with news. "The probate court has issued a ruling," he said. "Given Peterson's disbarment and the findings of fraud, they're voiding the estate administration. You're being recognized as the rightful heir with standing to pursue recovery of diverted assets." Lauren had waited 12 years to hear those words. 12 years of being told she had no claim, no standing, no right to what her father had left her. "What does that mean practically?" she asked. "It means you can sue to recover what was stolen. The dealership sale proceeds, the transferred assets, everything. It won't be easy or quick, but you have a strong case." Lauren thought about it for a long moment. She could spend the next 5 years in litigation, fighting to reclaim millions of dollars that were technically hers, proving fraud, tracing assets, battling Veronica in court. Or she could let it go. "How much would the legal battle cost?" she asked. "Conservatively, $500,000 in attorney fees. Maybe more if it goes to trial." "And how long?" 3 to 5 years minimum. Lauren looked around her office at Second Chapter's headquarters. The walls were covered with photos of women they'd helped. Business owners who'd gone from homeless to thriving. Mothers who'd rebuilt their lives. Women who'd reclaimed their dignity. This was her father's real legacy. Not dealerships or money. The belief that people could rise from nothing if someone believed in them. "Let's make Veronica an offer," Lauren said. "She returns the mansion, the house my father actually bought where I grew up. She pays $2 million to Second Chapter Foundation as restitution. In exchange, I won't pursue claims against the rest of the estate." Her lawyer was quiet. "Lauren, you're entitled to tens of millions. You could. I know what I could do. I'm telling you what I want to do." Her voice was firm. "That house has my father's memories. I want it back. The money goes to helping women she could have helped but chose to hurt instead. Everything else, she can keep it. Let her live with what she did." The offer was presented to Veronica's attorneys. They accepted within a week. Veronica knew she'd lose a prolonged legal battle and probably end up paying more in fees than Lauren was asking for. 6 months later, Lauren stood in front of the mansion again. But this time she had the keys. Marcus had offered to renovate it, to turn it into their home. But Lauren had a different vision. "This house was supposed to be my inheritance," she told him as they walked through the empty rooms. "My father bought it as a place for family. For love. For building a life." Veronica turned it into a monument to greed. "I want to turn it into something that actually helps people." They converted it into transitional housing for Second Chapter participants. 12 women at a time could live there while building their businesses and getting back on their feet. Lauren's old bedroom became a computer lab. Her father's office became a counseling center. The dining room where she'd eaten dinner with her father became a communal space where women shared meals and stories. The sign outside read, Henry Mitchell House, where second chapters begin. The wedding took place a year after Lauren's return home, in the gardens behind the Henry Mitchell House. It was small and intimate, just 75 people. Close friends, foundation staff, women from the program, and a few family members on Marcus's side. Catherine was there, beaming with pride. Diana Chin gave a reading. Dorothy, the homeless woman who'd helped Lauren survive those first terrible nights, sat in the front row wearing a dress Lauren had bought her, tears streaming down her face. The vice president attended, along with several senators and the mayor. But they were guests, not the focus. The focus was Lauren and Marcus, promising to build a life together based on partnership, purpose, and genuine love. As Lauren stood at the altar, she thought about the 16-year-old girl who'd been thrown out of this house. That girl had believed her life was ending. She couldn't have imagined this moment, standing in the gardens she'd been exiled from, surrounded by people who loved her, marrying a man who saw her worth, with a foundation that was changing lives. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what actually matters. After the ceremony, Lauren walked through the house that had been converted into a sanctuary for women rebuilding their lives. She found one of the current residents, a woman named Tasha, sitting in what used to be the library. "Beautiful wedding," Tasha said. "Thank you." Lauren sat beside her. "How are you doing? How's the business plan coming?" "Good. Scary. I keep thinking I'm going to fail." "That's normal. The fear means you care." Lauren smiled. "My father used to tell me that anything worth building comes with doubt. The question isn't whether you're scared. It's whether you're brave enough to build anyway." "Was he a good man?" "Your father?" "The best. He believed people deserve chances. That success wasn't about where you started, but about what you did with opportunities when they came." Lauren looked around the room. He would have loved seeing this house used this way, helping people instead of just existing as a status symbol. Later, at the reception, the vice president pulled Lauren aside. "I have a proposition," Daniel said. "We're launching a federal initiative around economic empowerment for displaced women. We want second chapter to be the pilot program. Federal funding, national expansion, policy integration. You'd be advising at the cabinet level." Lauren felt the magnitude of the offer. This was everything she'd been working toward. The chance to help not just hundreds of women, but thousands. Tens of thousands. "I'd be honored," she said. "Good. Because your story matters, Lauren. Not just what you survived, but what you built from it. That's what people need to see. That being broken isn't the end. It's often the beginning of something extraordinary." As the evening wore on, Lauren found herself standing at the edge of the garden, looking at the house. Marcus came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Happy?" he asked. "Yeah, I really am." She leaned back against him. "You know what's strange? If none of it had happened, if Veronica hadn't thrown me out, if I hadn't lost everything, I probably would have just inherited money and never built anything meaningful. I would have been comfortable and complacent. You don't know that. Maybe not. But I know that losing everything taught me what actually matters. Not money or houses or status. Impact. Purpose. Using your pain to help other people through theirs. Your father would be proud." "I think he would." Lauren smiled. "I'm finally living up to what he saw in me. Not as an heiress. As someone who builds things that matter." A few weeks after the wedding, Lauren received an unexpected visitor at the foundation offices. Veronica. She looked diminished. Older. The designer clothes were still there, but they seemed to hang differently, like she'd shrunk inside them. Her face was carefully made up, but nothing could hide the defeat in her eyes. "I know I have no right to be here," Veronica said, standing in the doorway. "But I needed to say something." Lauren gestured to a chair. "Sit." Veronica sat, her hands twisted in her lap. "I destroyed you. Or I tried to. I threw you out with nothing because I was jealous and greedy and cruel. I told myself I deserved what Henry had built. That you were just a child who hadn't earned anything. But the truth is, I was threatened by how much he loved you. How everything he did was for you." Lauren said nothing, just listened. "I spent 12 years living off what I stole from you," Veronica continued. 12 years telling everyone I was honoring Henry's legacy while I was destroying it. And you." She looked up, meeting Lauren's eyes for the first time. You actually honored it. You built something he would have been proud of. You became everything he believed you could be. Why are you here, Veronica? To apologize. I know it doesn't mean anything. I know it doesn't fix what I did. But I needed you to hear me say it. I was wrong. About everything. And I'm sorry. Lauren studied the woman who'd caused her so much pain. She waited to feel anger, or satisfaction, or vindication. But all she felt was tired pity. I forgive you, Lauren said quietly. Veronica's eyes widened. You what? I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying anger toward you gives you power over my life, and I'm done letting you have any power over anything that matters to me. Lauren stood. You stole money and property. Things. I built a life. I win. Veronica left in tears. Lauren never saw her again, but she heard months later that Veronica had started volunteering at a women's shelter. Small acts of service that would never make up for what she'd done, but might help someone else. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was her own second chapter. 5 years after the wedding, Second Chapter Foundation had expanded to 40 cities. They'd helped over 10,000 women start businesses. The federal program had launched with bipartisan support. Lauren had been named to Time's list of most influential people. But the moment that mattered most to her happened on a Tuesday afternoon. She was visiting the Henry Mitchell house, checking on the current residents. One of the women, Maria, had just signed a lease on her first restaurant location. She was crying happy tears, showing Lauren the keys. I can't believe this is real, Maria said. 6 months ago, I was living in my car. Now I'm a business owner. You did this, Lauren told her. You put in the work. You believed in yourself when it was hard. This is your victory. Lauren thought about all the people who'd seen something in her. Her father, Catherine, Diana, James, Marcus. People who'd believed when believing seemed foolish. That's what we do here, Lauren said. We see people, really see them, and we remind them that their worst moment doesn't define their entire story. That night, Lauren sat in her home office. She and Marcus had bought a house a few blocks from the foundation headquarters, working on a speech for an upcoming conference. Marcus came in with tea and sat beside her. You're going to work yourself to exhaustion, he said. I'm fine. This is important. It's always important. But you're important too. He turned her chair to face him. You've spent 15 years building this foundation, helping everyone else write their second chapter. When do you rest? I do rest. You run a national foundation, advise the White House, sit on 4 boards, and spend your weekends mentoring women in the program. That's not rest. Lauren smiled. I rest when I'm with you. When I'm doing this work. This isn't exhausting for me. It's energizing. I spent so long feeling powerless. Now I get to help other people find their power. That's not work. That's purpose. Okay, but maybe slightly less purpose tomorrow? We're supposed to have dinner with Daniel and his wife. I remember. I'll be there. But before dinner the next day, Lauren did one more thing. She drove to her father's grave. She hadn't been there in years. The headstone was the same. Henry Mitchell, beloved father and visionary. His legacy lives on. Lauren knelt in the grass, just like she had at 16. Hey, Dad, she said quietly. I know it's been a while. I've been busy. Building something I think you'd like. A foundation that helps women who've been thrown away. Women like I was. We're giving them what you gave me. Belief. Resources. A chance to become who they're meant to be. The wind rustled through the trees. Veronica tried to destroy your legacy. She sold the dealerships, scattered the assets, used your name for things you never would have supported. But she didn't win. Because your real legacy wasn't the business. It was me. What you taught me. Who you believed I could become. Lauren traced her finger over his name on the stone. I miss you every day. I wish you could meet Marcus. I wish you could see the foundation. I wish you could be there when we have kids and I get to tell them about the grandfather who built something from nothing and loved so fiercely that it survived even death. She sat there for a long time, feeling the sun on her face, remembering her father's voice. I kept my promise, she whispered finally. You told me to fight for what's mine. I did. Just not the way either of us expected. I didn't fight for money or houses or your company. I fought for the right to exist on my own terms. To build something meaningful. To turn pain into purpose. I fought for the chance to honor you by becoming someone you'd be proud of. Lauren stood, brushed off her pants, and took one last look at the headstone. I love you, Dad. I always will. And I'm going to keep making you proud. Every woman we help. Every life we change. Every person who gets a second chapter. That's your legacy. That's what survives. She walked back to her car feeling lighter than she had in years. That evening at dinner, surrounded by friends who'd become family, Lauren felt something she'd spent half her life chasing. Wholeness. She'd been broken at 16. Shattered into pieces by betrayal and loss. But she'd spent 15 years putting those pieces back together. Not into the same shape they'd been before. Into something stronger. Something that had cracks and scars but was more beautiful for them. Vice President Thompson raised his glass. A toast. To Lauren, who proves that being discarded is sometimes life's way of planting you where you'll grow. Everyone raised their glasses. Lauren looked around the table at the life she'd built. The man she loved. The work that mattered. The purpose that fueled everything. She'd lost her father's company. Lost the inheritance. Lost the life she was supposed to have. But she'd gained something infinitely more valuable. A life she'd chosen. Built. Created from nothing but determination and the belief that her story didn't end when someone else decided she was worthless. Later that night, as she and Marcus got ready for bed, Lauren checked her phone one last time. There was an email from one of the program participants. Dear Lauren, I graduated from second chapter 6 months ago. My business is thriving. But more importantly, I'm thriving. You saved my life. Not just by helping me start a company, but by showing me that being broken doesn't mean being unfixable. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for believing when I couldn't. Thank you for proving that second chapters are real. With gratitude, Jennifer. Lauren smiled and set down her phone. This was the legacy that mattered. Not buildings or bank accounts. Changed lives. Restored dignity. Women who'd been told they were nothing proving they were everything. Her father had been right all those years ago. She had changed the world. Just not the way he'd imagined. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living so fully, so purposefully, so powerfully that the people who tried to destroy you become irrelevant. Their actions don't define your story. They're just the prologue to something greater. Lauren Mitchell had been thrown out at 16 with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. She'd returned at 28 with a foundation, a purpose, and a love that nothing could shake. And she was just getting started. If you're watching this and you've ever felt discarded, invisible, or worthless, remember Lauren's story. Remember that being thrown away doesn't define your value. It just means someone else was too small to see it. Your second chapter is waiting. You just have to be brave enough to write it. Hit that like button if this story moved you. Subscribe for more stories about people who turned their pain into power. And comment below, what would your second chapter look like? Because everyone deserves a second chapter. Everyone deserves the chance to rise. Everyone deserves to know that their worst moment is not their final chapter. Lauren proved it. And so can you.